morning. Good morning and welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Linda Phippen, and as a member of the Worship Committee, I am pleased to be assisting with the service today. I'm glad to see all of you who've braved the snowish, reddish, rainish, whatever it is, cold weather to be here in person. But we also welcome those of you who are joining us on YouTube, whether that's today in real time or whether that will be sometime in the future. If you are here in person, we hope you will join us after the service for coffee, tea, snacks, and conversation. Here at Westside, you will find welcome and acceptance of people with differing spiritual beliefs or non-beliefs, different identities, different ways of life. We strive to center our lives in love and care for each other, for our neighbors near and far, and the world in all its complexity of peoples and cultures, as well as the other beings that share the world with us. Through love and care, we believe a greater community can and will arise and thrive. If you look at your order of service, you will find announcements about happenings at Westside, other important information. If you're streaming on YouTube, announcements will have been scrolling on your screen. Announcements are also available on our website at westsideuuc.org and in our weekly newsletter. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter and would like to, you can use the QR code on your order of service, or you can subscribe on our website. I do have a couple of other announcements that are not in the order of service. One is kind of a correction, actually. The arts and crafts that meets on the first Saturday of the month will not be meeting in February, but it will start back on March, on the first Saturday in March as usual. Also, coming later this month on the 22nd, there will be a celebration of life for Janet Edkins, who passed unexpectedly last November. It'll be on the 22nd at noon.
Of February, not January.
January?
No, you just said later this month.
Oh, thank you.
February.
I'm thinking ahead already. This is not good. 22nd of February. Thank you. Okay, and then I think Reverend Carol has some additional announcements.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all, brave souls who came out in the Arctic weather that we're having. I'm beginning to feel like every Sunday it's like, is church happening? Will it happen? Is it going to happen this week? So I'm happy to see you all this morning. For those of you who I may not have met yet, I'm Reverend Carol Bodeau. I'm privileged to serve here as minister. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Couple of things coming up. Next Sunday, just a reminder, is our regular Earth Church. So Sunday, the fourth Sunday of every month is Earth Church. Fourth Sunday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's happening next week. We'll be celebrating in bulk. And some info about the upcoming auction. You would have been hearing a lot more about this if we'd had church the last couple weeks, but now I'm going to try to give you all of the info all at once. So here's what you need to know. Number one, the theme of the auction. You all need to know that this is a fun theme. The auction is on February 2nd, 2 weeks from today. And what is February 2nd? Groundhog Day. It is, but it's not just for groundhogs anymore. In fact, there are approximately 20 holidays celebrated on Groundhog's Day, including Marmot the Hedgehog Day, not to mention Kiwi Fruit Day, Dump Your Significant Jerk Day, History of a Sneeze Ukulele Day. What else? Pork Rind Day. It's National Pork Rind Day. And it is, I think it's also like, there's some British dessert, figgy pudding or Yorkshire pudding. It's Yorkshire Pudding Day as well. So your first homework for the auction is to Google it and find out all the holidays that are celebrated that day, because we're celebrating all of them. You can show up with some kind of attire that honors whichever of those you would like. There will also be trivia and things like that. There's a potluck too. So it's 2 weeks from now. It's our regular potluck day. So if you have something you'd like to contribute to the auction, and we need auction items. We need people to be contributing auction items. That might be a dinner, a hike, or some kind of experience. Also, different kinds of physical items, particularly things that are so sometimes people have made jewelry, or not the stuff you want to get rid of in your garage sale. That's not really what we want. We want good stuff that you're someone would really love to have this. You can send a message to auction@westsideuuc.org saying, this is what I want to offer. This is what I'm offering. And you can start dropping things off next week. Yetta, please wave your hand there, Yetta. Wave your arm. Yetta is in charge of entertainment. So if you would like to play the ukulele, or sing, or do an interpretive dance, or anything like that, read a poem. About groundhogs. Yes, you could read a poem about groundhogs. If you have something you would like to do for part of the entertainment or talent show, let Yetta know. Yetta's email information is in the newsletter. It's on the website. I think it's in the order of service. Yetta's going to be in charge of that. And also, there are sign-up sheets in the back of the sanctuary if you are physically here for food items for the auction, so that we make sure that we have a good balance of foods. If you have questions, and surely people will at some point have some questions in the next couple of weeks, Michelle Knifing and Ann Harvey are both people who can answer your questions, so don't hesitate to ask them. One of the questions that came up this morning is, what if I'm not going to be here but I want to bid on things? There will be an online component to this auction. Starting a few days before the auction, there will be a separate site that you can go onto and make bids, and that will be open from, I think, Wednesday until right before the service starts that Sunday morning. So on the 2nd, we'll have a short worship service. It'll be about 30 minutes, and then we'll have a much longer potluck time as we do our auction then. Whew, okay. We had to get all the energy of all the auction announcements into 1 week instead of 3 this year. All right, so let's all take a deep breath. We're going to, in a moment, invite the bowl to sound. And the world is a full, busy, somewhat crazy place right now. And so whatever's been going on in your life, whether it's personal stuff, good personal stuff, or not so wonderful personal stuff, whether it's global stuff, collective stuff, whatever's going on, coming together is our opportunity to take a deep breath, to center ourselves in community and care, and remind ourselves that we are not alone, and that we are all here together to share both the challenges and the celebrations. So I'm going to invite the bowl to sing for us and invite you to just simply take a few deep breaths.
Reverend Carol's going to light the chalice this morning. The reading for the chalice lighting is called The Promise and the Practice, and it comes from Rebecca Savage. We light our flaming chalice as a beloved people united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May it melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst. May it spark in us a spirit of humility. May it ignite in us radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This is a chalice of audacious hope, This chalice shines a light on our shared past, signaling our intention to listen deeply, reflect wisely, and move boldly toward our highest ideals.
We're also going to light our candles of community, celebration, and sorrow this morning. There is a lot going on in the world. So I'd like to just call our attention and our awareness to some important, really important moments that are happening right now. This morning, it looks like the ceasefire in Gaza is actually happening and going to hold, at least for a while. So let us just take a minute to celebrate the spark of hope that offers the people of Gaza. People were, as of a couple hours ago, starting to return into their neighborhoods and homes. There's a lot of sorrow in that, too. There's a lot of them don't know what they're going to find. And tomorrow is a big day. Tomorrow is Inauguration Day in the United States, and it also happens to be Martin Luther King Day. And there's a little irony there. I heard a report on NPR this morning about the way they're changing the religious services tomorrow and on Tuesday as well, to ensure that the celebrations are bipartisan. So as the inauguration is happening, also there are celebratory events that are honoring the topic we're talking about today, which is racial justice, that will be happening in Georgia and DC and Tennessee. So Reverend William Barber will be doing a special event in Atlanta tomorrow at the same time as the inauguration. And then there will actually be an event in Tennessee, I'm not exactly sure where, to mark the work of Dr. King and his death in Tennessee. So there are multiple things happening tomorrow that are all speaking to a national moment of some significance. So I just invite us all to take a deep breath and be aware of that. So we're going to sing a song to help us stay centered in what really helps us do the work of justice in our world, which is heartfulness. Had we been here last week, you would have heard me preach about how love rather than fear is more motivating for long-term change. Fear can often spark us to short-term efforts, but real change comes out of deep love, which fuels commitment. And so this song, which is not number 1006 in the Teal hymnal, it's number 1008 in the Teal hymnal, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, is about how when we come from our hearts and we come from that place of care and concern, it's easier for us to sustain the work of making the world a better place. So I believe you're going to be able to see the lyrics up here on our wall, or you can look in your hymnal, and I am going to invite the courageous choir to come stand up in front, because some of you won't know this, and they're going to stand up and just help lead the singing. You all can stay seated. The rest of you can stay seated. You don't have to be brave, but the choir is going to sing, and we're going to sing all of the verses. thanks to the choir for that. So today we're talking about racial justice and equity and balance. Specifically, we're talking about anti-racism, which seems appropriate given that tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day and that we are in a time in our country when these issues are at heightened levels of concern. As a UU congregation, we have a commitment to do what we can to build a world that is more just and that is more equitable and more sustainable for everybody. We as UUs focus on living the values of loving and caring for all of life, regardless of our differences of opinion or identity or experience. And we often, in the past, one of the phrases that you will have heard Unitarian Universalists using to express this is, we honor the inherent worth and dignity of all life. And this area of anti-racism work has been an area of growth and challenge and success and struggle and conflict and work for UUs since the beginning of both Unitarianism and Universalism. In recent, Universalism has had to do some hard self-assessment around this issue. You might have heard me tell the story that a few years ago we had a huge upheaval in our denomination based on some hiring practices and some hiring that happened in our own region here. We had a hiring opportunity for a Southerner to be hired as the lead regional person in the South, and despite the fact that many people of color from the South and many women of color and a wide range of people from the South applied for and were qualified for that position, the position was given to a white man from the North to regulate the Southern region, which didn't go over very well with many people. It led to the resignations of actually all of the white men in leadership in the UUA at the time, and a mass, including the president of the denomination, who then was replaced by two interim leaders. One was Bill Singford, our previous president, the first African-American president of our denomination, and our current president, actually, Sophia Betancourt, who is an African-American woman. And they ran the denomination for a couple of years in the interim and kicked off a whole bunch of reassessments of our denomination's practices regarding racial justice. So this has been a big deal for us. You know, of course, Unitarianism and Universalism were important voices in the abolitionist movement of the 19th century. They were important voices in the civil rights era, in the mid-20th century. One of our local emeritus ministers, Gordon Gibson, is an extremely important figure in the civil rights movement in this area in the South, and has published books about that, and is a very well-known scholar and speaker on the topic. But each generation of UUs has to address this issue again, fresh, new, because it's something we're constantly learning and growing around. Now, over the last few months, a group of Westsiders, about 17 or 18 people, has been participating in an adult RE program based on this kind of work. And we've been using a book by the African-American scholar and activist W. Kamau Bell and a white ally and activist Kate Schatz. The book is titled Do the Work, an Antiracist Activity Book. And it is, in fact, a really fun activity book. It has like puzzles, crossword puzzles, and games and quizzes and things like that, as well as a lot of educational content. But what's been really important for the group is these conversations about it. These conversations that are designed to help us grapple with issues of racism in ourselves and in our society. And like many tools that are used for this work, the book starts with some key foundational concepts that I think it's important for all of us to understand. And one of the first premises of the book is that being anti-racist is different than saying, I'm not racist. These are different things. So being actively anti-racist requires taking proactive steps to counter systemic racism as it works in our own lives and in our larger society. And if you look at the new principles of our denomination, the new way we're stating our principles and purposes, they explicitly state that it's not okay to just say, yeah, I believe in that, but that we actually have to be accountable for taking action. So the first step that this book and many other resources focuses on in order to do this work is discovering, acknowledging, and addressing the inherent biases, prejudices, and racially based uses of power that we have as individuals. The book, and by extension our discussion group, spends a lot of its time looking at how we understand ourselves. Last week our conversation was about identity. How do we understand who I am? And how, in addition to that, we see the role of race and racism in our families and communities. So I'm just going to throw a couple questions out there to see how we're not going to have a conversation about it, but just see how these land for you. How do you feel about the idea that by default, if you were raised in this culture, any person raised in this culture, but particularly if you were raised to have a white identity in this culture, you have been shaped by racism. No escaping it. What if I say that racism, which we can define as prejudice combined with power, so we often have thought of racism as just an attitude, but actually more and more scholars are saying racism is actually, it's the use of prejudice with power behind it, okay? If racism, defined as prejudice plus power, is an inescapable quality of the American experience, it is also a profoundly unequal experience for people depending on their ethnic identities, okay? And let's go one step further. And this is an even more uncomfortable step for many of us. What if I suggest that it is the responsibility of people who were raised with white identities in our culture to address our own prejudice and privilege if we actually want to live our values? It's not enough to just say we have the value, but we have a responsibility to actually look at how that's operating in our own lives. And these are uncomfortable statements to grapple with. We actually had this interesting conversation last week in our discussion group that this book isn't that big, but because the discussions are so difficult and deep and complex and multifaceted, we're just going to barely skim the surface, and it's going to take us till August. Like, I charted out a syllabus for the discussions all the way through August, and we're still going to just be scratching the surface. Because these are uncomfortable concepts to grapple with. Many people who are culturally identified as white want to resist the idea that we are racist. Every single one of us has either said or heard someone in our close approximation say, "But I'm not racist." And that's tough because we're talking about a system that is the foundational system of our culture. And beyond that, some of us struggle even with the validity of the concept of whiteness in the first place. And I was one of those people. I struggled with the concept of whiteness. So many years ago, I had really been grappling with this question, like, what is it? I don't feel like a white person. I know something about my ethnic heritage. I don't, I have a more nuanced identity than that. I found that concept of white to be vague and difficult to understand if I thought of it as my ethnic identity. And this is tricky because we've been taught to believe that whiteness is an ethnic identity. But actually, it's a culturally imposed identity that is linked to ethnicity. So I had some insights sparked by a book written by a UU minister, Tandeka. She's an African-American UU minister. And she wrote this book, Learning to be White, Money, Race, and God in America. And in the book, she talks about how whiteness is culturally taught. And actually, it's passed on from the time children are very small in a set of behavioral codes and identity formation messages that are often harmful and damaging and hurtful to any child they're being passed on to. And I had this insight from her book. I wasn't born white. I was born ethnically Northern European. My light skin and my genealogical heritage made me eligible to be identified as white. I was eligible for that privilege. But this is important. I was raised with a white cultural identity by my parents, by my school, by my church, by my society. I was conditioned to my whiteness as a cultural fact based on certain other ethnic, genealogical, sociological factors. Because I was born with light skin, Northern European ancestry, etc., I was assigned the privilege marker of whiteness. So even if it's true that I'm not actually ethnically white, I am in fact conditioned and by nature of cultural context, white in the white social category. And that comes with all kinds of privileges. So I had to let go of the argument that white isn't real, it doesn't count, right? And that's a pretty common thing, that when people who are culturally conditioned to whiteness feel threatened or upset about being called racist or being told that they're prejudiced, they will often say, well, I don't, I'm Irish, I'm Scottish, my people had whatever too. But the point here is that these are systemic cultural conditions and conditioning processes that then shape our collective reality. I had to accept that regardless of my lineage or heritage, I have been placed in a cultural category that privileges me. Now, once I do that, I have to accept that my whiteness actually affords me privileges. Privileges that, whether I ask for them or not, I do get de facto. And this acknowledgement can be pretty hard to make. When we talked about this in our Westside class last week, we talked about how much of white privilege is actually invisible freedoms from certain things. Not necessarily more freedom to certain things, although there's also all of that. But the things that are least visible and most pervasive are actually freedoms from certain things. One of the most common arguments people can make that they don't need to become anti-racist is this one. Well, America is a country where everyone has the legal right to improve their lot in life. The book Do the Work, and many scholars refer to this as the bootstrapping argument. Right? Anybody in America can pull themselves up by their bootstraps. The bootstrapping argument goes something like this. By law, everyone in America has the same opportunities, and since person Y pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, that proves anyone can do it. And it is true that some people from traditionally marginalized and oppressed groups are, in fact, able to overcome enormous obstacles to success that they face as a result of their non-whiteness. There are nonetheless certain freedoms that culturally white people have that make accomplishing things a lot easier. These are freedoms from. So, for example, I am generally free from the stress of worrying that if I go over the speed limit and I get pulled over, that I will be treated aggressively or even thrown into jail, that something really bad will happen to me. I drive, and I'm like, well, if I get stopped, whatever, I'll just pay the ticket. I am free from the assumption walking into a store, I am free from the assumption on the part of the people who run the store that I'm more likely to steal from them, simply because of the way I look. I'm free from that. I don't have to worry about that. I'm free from the stresses of living in a neighborhood that is economically impoverished or experiencing violence at higher levels, which are the common experiences of people of color in this country. I'm free from a wide range of social and political conditions by simple merit of the fact that I've been assigned whiteness. There are many experiences that I am not subject to that are exhausting and draining and demoralizing just because of the way I look and the conditions I am in. So the book we're using for the class assumes that white privilege is a thing. And it's something that we often hear people say, well, that's not, no. There's a whole section in the book on what they refer to as white defensiveness, too. Another important component in the book that we all need to address is the inadequacies and downright inaccuracies of how history is taught. A significant portion of the book is dedicated to uncovering the biases inherent in the stories we have been told about our social context. Stories that unfairly privilege the white cultural perspective. And the book also addresses things we can do to become anti-racist, from very personal and private actions to much larger public and collective ones. We haven't even gotten there yet. We have been working on this I don't know how many weeks we've been doing this now. It's like 3 months, 4 months. We just barely had our first conversation about identity. And the truth of the matter is, we could have spent 4 times as long on our conversation about identity as we did. And only like a third of the class was there. So these aren't simple conversations. One of the things that's really clear to me facilitating these discussions is that the issue of becoming anti-racist is complex, multi-layered, very personal, intensely personal, and it doesn't happen quickly. In fact, at the core of becoming truly anti-racist, it may be absolutely essential to rewrite our own identities, to re-understand ourselves. That is not simple work. That is not signing a petition or going to a march. That is radically re-understanding who I am in my world. One of the most common arguments people make that they don't really need to actively do the work of becoming anti-racist is to say something like, well, I don't have slaves. I didn't steal the land. I didn't do the things that my ancestors did. I shouldn't be held accountable for that. And in essence, the argument is that we in the current day are not to be confused with our imperialist and colonialist ancestors, which is true. But here's one of my favorite ways to respond to this, in myself as well as in others. And I will tell you that I say this to people of color as much as I say it to people who have been identified as white. The job isn't necessarily about changing historical actions, although the truth of the matter is that stealing land and unfairly using the labor of people of color is still absolutely happening. That's another issue. The job most of us face today is not stopping imperialist actions, but instead the much more subtle work of decolonializing our brains. Because the colonial mindset is how we have been trained. The way we think about things is inherently trained to be colonial. So the first step in anti-racism work is to explore and unpack the ways that we think about things that reinforce these systems. It's to acknowledge the unconscious assumptions and biases or prejudices that we have that are rooted in colonialism and imperialism. And that impacts all of us, regardless of our ethnic heritage, because our culture is based on it. It's based on it. And these are difficult topics. I guarantee you that in this room right now, I get to see your faces. I get to see the whole room's faces from here. So I get to see the twitches and the smiles and the consternation and the confusion and the sadness and the I don't know what to think about. I get to see all of the responses. These are not easy things to talk about. They are difficult to talk about. There are some things in this book that I will flat out say I disagree with, and that I am looking forward to grappling with other people. It seems to me, though, that open, honest discussion of these kinds of assumptions and biases is essential if we want to actually live the values we say we believe in. It's easy to say. I have a story from my childhood. I was raised in the North, and I was raised in a family that was adamant that they were anti-racist until, as a teenager, as a young woman, I became friends with an African-American young man. That changed the story a lot. My very anti-racist, my very non-racist parents suddenly, it was a whole different story when I said, oh, there's this guy. And they were like, ooh, nope. That didn't work for them. That was a big education for me in what it means to actually do the work, right? So, one of my assumptions about Unitarian Universalism is this. It is not possible to live our values. It is not possible to live all our values all the time 100%. These are ideals. If the world already worked this way, if we already worked this way, we wouldn't have to say, we're going to work on this, right? We make a mistake when we think that we are living our ideals and just looking at other people who are not living our ideals. The denomination as a whole had to come face to face with this a few years ago. We thought we were doing great. I will tell you that the Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the denomination were already saying, you're not doing so great. But the people leading were like, we're doing great. And then it was very obvious that we weren't doing so great. But the values we hold are ideals that we aspire to and commit to working towards. They are not necessarily the reality that we even have in our own hearts, even as we want to, because we ourselves were not raised. How many of us were actually raised in the set of values that is Unitarian Universalism? How many of us were literally conditioned 100% to these values? That's a rare person. That's a rare person. So we have all sorts of unconscious conditioning that is counter to our values. One of the most important projects of Unitarian Universalism is to be willing to talk about that, to look at it, to ask questions of ourselves, to learn and change and grow as individuals. That means that not just the people around us, but we must be willing to look at our own ways that we're not living our values. So I want to encourage you to think about, you don't have to join the discussion group, although you are welcome to do that. We meet on the second and fourth Sundays after church for a couple hours. And as I said, we've barely made it to chapter 1 so far, so you won't be missing much if you just show up now. We are going to be at it, I would say, for sure through this summer, and I'm going to guess all of next year as well. This is a long project. You can also pick up a copy of the book for yourself. It's designed to be usable by an individual. It's a great book. You can do the activities on your own or with family and friends. If you do choose to get the book, I want to encourage you to get it from our current Justice and Generosity partner, the Bodeau, which is an organization in Knoxville that is working within and supporting the African American community there. And we have worked with them for a couple of years, about a year and a half, 2 years now, trying to support them and encourage their work. They are our long-term partner on this issue. They sell the book at their bookstore. It was actually the staff there that recommended it to us when we were visiting there, and I said, if you were going to recommend a book to use with the congregation on this issue, what would you recommend? And they said, this is the book. So if you're going to get it, I encourage you to look at it there. Get it from them. But however, whether you use the book or not, I want to urge us to go deeply into these questions. Read a blog, write a journal entry, send me a long email about what you thought about what I said today. talk to a neighbor, rant in your car on the way home, but think about it more deeply. Whatever we do, this is really important work, and we need to be addressing it. And the first step is not to go out and try to change other people. Most activists and scholars and people who are working on these issues, particularly people of color, will tell anyone who's been culturally conditioned to whiteness that your first job is to work on yourself and to unpack your own biases and assumptions. So I invite you to do that courageous work in the container of this community. It is work that starts here but has an enormous ripple effect in the world. So may it be so. May we do that. So on the bigger topic of living our values is a central practice at Westside. And we are always trying to deepen that practice and become more faithful about it. One of the ways we do this is what I'm describing as our justice and generosity projects and partnerships. So a little bit of history here. Some of you may remember that in the past we had share the plate partners, and we still kind of do that. We called them share the plate partners. And the way we found our share the plate partner was this. Every quarter, we'd say, somebody suggest someone that we can support. And then every quarter, we would send some donations to that organization. And last year, the board had some deep conversations about this. And what we realized is that we need those partnerships to be more long-term. So I'm going to tell you one of the cultural assumptions of whiteness. One of the cultural assumptions of whiteness is that we can send some money to it and it'll be good enough. One of the colonialist, paternalistic, imperialist ways of behaving is to say, oh, I'm doing all I need to do on that. I sent them a check. Without building a relationship, without even going to the community and saying, what do you need? What kind of supports do you want? You tell us. So we change the way we do this. No longer do we just pick somebody we want to send some money to. We actually have established long-term relationships. So now we have justice and generosity partnerships. Some of these are quarterly, and some of these are just long-term things we do. So we have long-term commitments. So for example, in the area of economic justice, we run the VITA program, the Voluntary Tax Assistance Program, every year in the spring. It starts in a couple of weeks, where we do free taxes for people who need their taxes to be done for them, but cannot pay someone to do those taxes. So that's a commitment, long-term. We've been doing it for years. Charlie Dudney runs that. That is a long-term commitment. Big thanks to Charlie and his team. Another long-term partnership is support of Samantha Monday's program, supporting people coming out of incarceration. Long-term, all year, multiple years. By the way, she wanted me to tell you all, for those of you that have been using the new Amazon option to send her supplies, she is appreciating that immensely. If you want more info about that, ask me or our administrator, Brad, after the service. That's working great. We are considering becoming involved in Family Promise again, and in a couple of minutes, Elizabeth, prepare yourself. In a minute, I'm going to ask Elizabeth Corbett, our Programs and Membership Coordinator, to come up and talk about a couple of these things. So there are some things that happen every year during the year, and we have also changed the way we do our Share the Plate. We now have 4 quarterly projects or focus projects, and hopefully within the next few months, we will have ongoing partnerships for all those areas. So in the winter, our focus is racial justice, anti-racism work. The Bottom has been our partner in that area and will continue to be our partner in that area going forward. In the spring, our focus is LGBTQIA+ issues. Our partner for that is Knox Pride, and that will continue to be the case into the future, so that we can build long-term relationships with these organizations so they can call on us when they have a need, that we can be accountable to them. The Green Sanctuary Team Committee will be working on coming up with a long-term partner for our environmental focus, which is the summer topic. And hopefully by next fall, we will have a long-term partner on family issues. So racial justice, LGBTQIA+ issues, the environment and families, the care of families in our local community. Those are our quarterly priorities. So Elizabeth, Elizabeth has arranged for a speaker from the bottom to be here on February 23rd to talk about that organization, where they are, what they need, how we can support our local African American community. And so I'm going to ask Elizabeth to come up and give us some updates on Family Promise, and if you have any about the bottom, that would be great.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Corbett. I'm our Programs and Membership Director. And as Carol said, our partner this quarter is the bottom. And we do have someone coming at the end of February. And I'm hoping after that visit, maybe there'll be a group of us that we could go down and see the center sometime in March. If you haven't been down there, they have a wonderful bookstore, and they do all sorts of neat things in the community. They have a podcast. They host barbecues in their backyard. They have a sewing circle and a poetry or a pottery group, and they're really trying to encourage young entrepreneurs also in the community. Carol also mentioned that we have an opportunity to start up our work with Family Promise again. Some of you may remember that before COVID, we were a host church, and 3 or 4 times a year we had unhoused families in the church, and for that week we gave them, we prepared meals, we spent the night. If there were kids in the families, which there often were, we had activities at night and homework help, and this is a wonderful program in the Knoxville area, and to work with unhoused families and to keep them together, and to have the kids still go to their home school, which is really important. Well, we have an opportunity here at Westside to now be a support church. First Farragut United Methodist has asked us if we would like to be a support church for them. They will be the host church. So they are in charge of organizing things, but we learned when we were a host church that it requires more than a congregation. And so we actually had a few support churches. To be a support church really is under the direction of the host church, but it means helping, maybe taking a night or two during the week and preparing a meal and serving it in First Farragut. It could mean providing a children's activity for the evening. It could mean helping set up their church the morning of the beginning of the week so that the cots are in place and things like that, and tearing it down at the end of the week and getting everything onto the Family Promise van. It may include some overnights, which I know are dreaded words. That was a really hard thing for us to do here at Westside, is to get people to spend the night. But maybe First Farragut has a different setup than we did, and it'll be easier. But we need to decide if we have the energy and the people power to do that. We have some sign-up sheet on the back. If you sign up, it does not commit you, but we are really looking to see if we have the energy and the people power to be able to support First Farragut and work on supporting families here that need some help in the Knoxville area. There's also a little pamphlet back there if you want some more information about Family Promise. You can take that. On other membership, yes, Charlotte.
How many people is United Methodist Church planning to host?
How many families?
People.
I have no idea. It depends on, like, we in our setup here, we could host 3 or 4 families with our rooms that we had.
And usually it's around 10 or 12 people.
Yes. And I don't know how many rooms First Farragut has, but I've been trying to get some answers, and I'm not quite complete yet, but that's a good question. On other membership news, I will have 4 cards over on that table for us to sign, to send to some people who have been visitors in the past and don't show up every week or have moved away. So I hope you'll stop by the round table in the back and sign some cards for them. And Carol also mentioned that she'll be preaching on this book next week, and if anyone would like to borrow this copy from me, you're welcome to do that.
Let me tell them what the book is. So this is another justice issue that we are focused on. So next week, the book group has been reading this book. This is the UUA's common read right now. It's called Authentic Selves, Celebrating Trans and Non-Binary People and Their Families. It's interviews by Peggy Gillespie. It's a great book. It's a great book. It's a wonderful book. So this is going to be the topic of the service next week. So we're looking forward to talking about that as well. So, the bottom line, did you catch that? Did you catch that? Did you catch that? The bottom line. Okay, everybody smile, at least for a second. These are serious topics, but the best thing about doing them in community is that we do have each other's back on this. We do not have to feel threatened by hard conversations. I'm going to repeat that. We do not have to feel threatened by hard conversations. We can have hard conversations in a community that is committed to care for ourselves and one another. We can do that in ways that allows us to explore things that are difficult and vulnerable and challenging and still feel like we're okay. That's one of the most important things about being a community like this. So we're going to sing one more song. A lot of this is prepping you for practicing singing these songs and using them at other times. We're going to sing number 1051, We Are. And here's why we chose this song. This song is about being connected to many generations. The song was written by Issei Barnwell, who is an African-American musician, founder of the African-American group Sweet Honey in the Rock. And this song is about connecting to our ancestors, which is an interesting way to think about the world when we think about anti-racism work. It is okay to still be connected to our ancestors and our ancestry. Unitarian Universalism is rooted in the Puritan tradition. It is solidly rooted in settler colonialism and imperialism. Absolutely. And there are good things about that, and there are some things we get to work on and evolve. So as we sing this song, it's about being connected to our roots and growing better branches, making new fruit, right? So I'm going to invite the choir to bravely come up, the courageous choir to come up. Follow the lyrics on the screen. There's a part if you read music and you look at the music, you might be a little confused because we're not going to repeat a certain part. We're going to sing basically the whole thing, but we're going to just follow the words and you'll be fine. So I'll let Brad turn this on. That was your introduction. Prepare to practice it, because y'all are going to need to learn it eventually. So I am going to invite us to rise, if you feel so inclined, and join hands with your neighbors. Yeah. You don't have to hold hands. If you feel like the hand thing doesn't work, like, that's fine. Colds and flus are around. Don't feel obliged. Hold your own hands. If you can hold your own hands. Like, I'm serious. Hold your own hands, or hold somebody else's foot if you really feel like it. Or literally hold the hand and then walk to the hand sanitizer on the back table immediately after this. All right, good heavens. Some of you not in the room cannot see that Virginia is doing this like this. It's like a yoga pose. So here's the thing about community. Sometimes I'm going to give this as a very clear example. There may be people in this room right now who are holding hands who don't want to because they're afraid to break with the crowd. That is the nature of cultural conditioning. So I invite you all to drop hands and step back. Don't drop, Virginia. Just, yeah, now you've been exposed. You've been exposed. Good point. So Judy just said, I've already been exposed. All right, hold hands again if you want to. Ain't that the truth about cultural conditioning? Ain't that the truth about cultural conditioning? You went to a school in this country. You've been exposed. You watched television in the United States. You've been exposed. You went to Walmart. You've been exposed. And I do not mean to the virus of a cold or COVID. If you went anywhere in this culture, you have been exposed to racism. You have already been infected and contaminated. So, yup, it's a bummer. It's a bummer. So you're going to have to put your foot down at some point, Virginia. So, okay, so you've already been exposed. Now, we all been exposed together. The people in this room, we all been exposed together. We are our own little petri dish, but we can work together to address the effects of that fact. So when we go out, yes, wash your hands, try to live your values. Use the hand sanitizer, use the sanitizer. It won't work on the norovirus. It ain't gonna work on all the stuff we gotta deal with from our conditioning either. Use a hand sanitizer, wash your hands. Hang out with people who you know for sure, they aren't super contaminated. Like if someone's coughing up racist slurs, don't hang out with them, right? And together, we work on the effects of the illness that is racism. We do all the things we can. So I invite you to be conscious of that as you go out into this day, into this week, and into our lives to live our values the very best we can, knowing that we support each other in that work. Go in peace and go in passion. And wash your hands often.